Hello, everyone, and welcome. We should be starting any moment. We've got a number of people from all over the world joining, although most of them are in South Africa, where I'm now. And yeah, so settle in. We'll give it another 30 seconds, and just to give some people time to join. But yeah, welcome everyone, and I'll be kicking off in shortly, and I'll be sharing some screens. And yeah, what a great topic that we have to discuss. Financial modeling, financial management, and of course the big two-letter word that everyone is concerned and excited about is AI, artificial intelligence. So definitely going to, provide you some real insight and some real actions and some real useful information. Okay, so let's get into it. So today's webinar, game-changing modern financial management reporting and scalable modeling tools with AI. What we're going to do is I'll do a brief introduction to myself and our two great speakers as well. We're going to provide some strategic context. So Carl's going to walk us through some of that. I'm going to share some disciplines around strong engineering and SME. Also talk a little bit about AI. What is it? Some of the key concepts. And then we're going to have a live demonstration of AI tools, both for enterprises. So Margaret's going to take us through some of those, and I'm going to cover some of the tools more in the SME space. But of course, as we know, these tools could potentially have a bit of overlap. And then I'm going to introduce the practical workshop we have running in South Africa later this week, and have time for Q&A. So my name is Rubin. I'm the CEO and founder of Model Citizen. I'm also the founder of Excel Cloud, which is an Excel add-in that produces information out of Xero. I'm also the chief data modeler for Potenza. So I wear many hats, and really my main focus is making sure we use data to make better decisions as finance professionals. I'm not going to rattle on all the stuff that I've done. I'm going to pass on to my other two co-speakers. I'm going to go through some things, and then I guess we'll circle back for some Q&A in the end. Carl, over to yourself.
Thank you, Lance. Good morning. Good morning, or good afternoon, evening, depending where you are in the world. Lance, thanks for organizing this. So firstly, from myself, I am in business still. I am a passionate entrepreneur. I actually wearing two hats. I'm the CEO of 1618 Technologies, which is a company that implement and support corporate performance management systems, which includes budgeting, forecasting, etc. Specific focus on VENA. And then on the other side, I am running my own consulting and coaching company, and my focus is on neuroscience and the brain and how that functions within leadership roles and in business. That's me. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Carel. Hi, everybody. Greetings. I am Margaret Smith, and I work for 1618 Technologies. I like to describe myself as a problem solver when it comes to data and following data from A to Z. My history, I've been in the investment banking, specifically in the regulatory space, but now I've moved across into FP&A and still following the data trail. So I look forward to taking you through some practical AI demo later in the presentation. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks, Margaret. And Carl, you want to kick us off in the leadership aspects of technology? Because I guess there's technology is just a tool. Really, you've got to have the right leadership to embrace it. So why don't you take us through it?
Thank you, Lance. Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I've seen over years is that leaders do not really adopt technology timeously and then lead with technology. And I see the similar thing happening with AI. In the 1984, and I'm giving away my age, 1983, 84, 82, 87, the PC became much more user-friendly, and we saw the PC on the desks of lots of business people. And then people start saying, wow, this computerization is going to replace me. It's going to take away my job. They're concerned. They say everything is volatile. And you know what? I see a big parallel between that and AI today. Similar argument. Yes, the technology did replace some people. I can think about very quickly. If you guys, I don't know whether anybody, if you ever know about in big companies, you had a filing office, you had filing clerks, you had the post where the post or mail were delivered. You had a small little post office within a big company, and then you had people distributing the mail etc., etc. All these things disappeared, but it was replaced by very exciting jobs like systems analysts, programmers, and we can carry on. And I foresee the same thing with AI. And it is the leader who will decide in his or her organization what role AI will play and how people will adopt AI. If we look at the new mandate for leadership driven by AI, firstly, the leader must become a digital steward. They must adopt. They must accept accountability and responsibility. Also, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a cultural perspective and psychological perspective. The leader must also be fluent, not in necessarily the utilization by itself or technically how AI works, but what is the possibilities that AI provide to me, my company, and the people in the company, and also the limitations of AI. AI still do have a lot of limitations today. They will also have limitations going forward. One of the limitations in AI, being a emotional intelligence practitioner myself, lecturing a lot about emotional intelligence, is that AI still lacks, and I think will still for a long time lack, emotional intelligence. The other thing is the leader must make strategic choices with AI, but that needs to be rooted in both data and the values of the organization and the values of people. We sometimes forget that. When we start talking about the human and the machine by itself, we need to make sure that we take cognizance of the fact that ethics will play and still will play a bigger and bigger role going forward. Ethics in business today is a hot topic. Ethics in global trade, I think, is a hot topic today. However, the ethical compass within technology and within AI becomes very, very important. So the leader must understand the ethical complications of AI. The leader must understand that some of the decisions AI will make and can make today is flawed. I'm playing around with AI, doing a lot of stuff with AI myself. I love it. I'm a technology person who drives technology. I love technology. I'm a technology freak since the late 70s. And I still love the technology. And that's why I play with it. And really, there's lots of flaws still within AI. And we can see that improving. But the leader needs to understand that and remember what the liability can be. Leadership also must integrate the principles of being responsible with AI and make sure that when you're responsible with AI, you've got a psychological responsibility to the people, to customers, and that ethics must be part and parcel of your company culture, which you will also then carry into the AI environment. If we then look at uncertainty, well, we hear the VUCA world, etc., being mentioned so many times, and I heard this again from the early 80s, uncertainty. So there's only one thing we can be sure of, and that is that things are going to change. I think that's one of the things that we can be sure of. And you can be sure of that you will be taxed. That's the other thing that you can be sure of. So if you look at uncertainty, how do you lead through uncertainty? Well, uncertainty is caused by a lot of ambiguity. Look into the web, look into Facebook, look into LinkedIn. Everybody, everywhere starts throwing around a lot of acronyms again, because that's what we love in technology. And there's also still a lot of new acronyms around AI. We can create a lot of ambiguity. Make sure as a leader that you become comfortable with that, you understand that. Secondly, prioritize upskilling and reskilling of all the people within the company. Know what the net effect is going to be on the people within the company. Inspire cross-functional collaboration between teams. I do facilitate a lot of team optimization exercises. And one of the biggest single problem is cross-functional collaboration between teams. We need to fix that if we want to really work with AI and implement AI effectively and efficiently within business. And the next one is really stay curious. The leader must always stay curious, not just on a technical perspective, how AI works, new developments, practical implementations, but also from a social perspective. How will AI affect my people? How will AI affect the customers? How will AI affect the community? The shifts in workforce dynamics, public sentiment, cultural implications of that. So from a psychological perspective, as I said, ethics, the purpose. What's the purpose of AI within the business, and how does it fit in the purpose of the business? And what is the long-term consequences of AI going to be? So in conclusion, will AI replace leaders? Well, definitely not. However, leaders who will not use AI and do not understand AI and doesn't want to lead with AI, they will be replaced. And that's I can see that, and I've seen that coming, and it will become much more relevant as we go forward. Leaders must have a blended strategic foresight with ethical responsibility and human empathy. Very important, human empathy. And then they need to lead with direction in their companies using data. Again, if AI makes use of data, and if there's data, it is in the principle of IT or databases or computerization, as we call it in the 80s, it is still the same. Garbage in, garbage out, stays the same. And that brings me to where I'm going to hand over again to Lance. But if we look into the Office of Finance, I see and we see as 1618 and Venna, which we work with, is that Excel is very much still relevant. 87% of companies continue to rely on Excel. That's why we see Excel as a very important tool which you can use. And Margaret will show us how with Excel and Venna we can use AI. Excel provides the ability, and here what we look at is to use the existing Excel API and IP and leverage our experience of 1618 and Venna. We believe in the powerful capabilities and ongoing Microsoft innovation when we use AI and when we use applications in corporate performance management, including budgeting, forecasting, consolidations. It offers us unsurpassed flexibility and familiarity with high user adoption, and then the cognitive comfort to think. I think that's crucial for us to create and manage detailed planning modules. We need to be able to use our cognitive capabilities to think this through, to think about the data, to think about the processes, to think about the outcomes, and then utilize AI to reach that. Thank you. Lance, over to you.
Thanks, Carl. And I just want to echo that. I mean, everyone talks about AI replacing Excel, and you see all the technologies that are trying to remove Excel. And yet VBA, which everyone thought was actually dying, actually got a resurgence as a result of AI. So now you can literally ask AI to write your VBA code, whereas in the past it was very limited access to something like VBA. So I actually think it's actually going to shift. And yeah, ultimately it's about the user using it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about in the SME space. These are small to medium-sized companies. They don't have very large finance teams. They often have outsourced bookkeeping, accounting, and sometimes a fractional CFO, which we've started to provide some support in. So why is it still relevant in that space? So in the bigger corporates, you can see why, but in the smaller corporates as well, they don't have the time and the cost to replace Excel, and it's still very, very well used and it's still flexible for the user in order to do what they need to do. Let's not get rid of Excel, but let's remove the bad habits. So we keep the good of Excel. And one of the reasons why people are not removing it, of course, is the cost limitations. To replace Excel with another big planning tool or some other form of spreadsheeting tool, there's cost limitations. Skills limitations, I guess, to some degree, people need to then understand a different set of skills for different sort of software application where Excel skills are broadly, whilst there's different levels of competency, Excel skills are probably one of the most broadly skills in, particularly we're talking the Office of Finance and Accounting and Finance. And also the tech limitations. I think the thing that we've always had in the past is like tech can't do certain things, but there's been such a huge amount of innovation by Microsoft through dynamic arrays and lambdas and also Power BI and how some of that's coming along. But the last bit is always the human part that's causing the limitation in terms of the human skills. But right now, we've actually got the ability to improve that. So when we say, improving our skills, we're talking about the bad habits that we've developed. So hard coding is probably the biggest bad habit that I see still to this day. And in fact, it's quite funny. I've been using AI quite a bit to build models, and AI also hard codes. And I'm like, no, don't do that. You need to change that and take all the hard coding formulas like multiplying by percentages inside a formula, take it out, put it in an assumption sheet. Workbook structure is a very bad habit as well. And again, we have to train the AI to do some of that, and you'll see some of that in the demonstration I'm going to do shortly. Limited automation. Most people don't know how to automate in Excel. Even just the use of Power Query is still quite limited, surprisingly, even though Power Query has been around for more than a decade. And then, spreadsheets treated like databases. Again, looking at other bigger tools are important rather than just using Excel as a database. And often we blame Excel. We blame Excel for hard coding. We blame Excel for errors. We're not actually thinking about the skills in the practitioner. So very easy to blame software because it's not a human, and it's very difficult for us as humans to blame ourselves or to recognize that we have certain challenges. The cost limitations I spoke about as well, some of these aspects. And I guess the skills limitations, really, we're talking about two skills. One is the skill of technology inside Excel. And that's just like native Excel with no add-ins. So I think there's a limitation in people's ability to use, like I said, Power Query as an example, or lambdas and dynamic arrays. These are new features and functions inside Excel. So there's a limitation there. But then also there's limited knowledge about add-ins that boost Excel. I've always been a big user of external tools inside Excel that boost Excel. We continue to use and evolve. There's certain add-ins that I do not use and I do not recommend anymore that I was using a few years ago. So you have to keep up to date. Some of these add-ins fall behind. Some of these add-ins are ahead of the curve. So an important part of the skills limitation dimension within SMEs. Tech limitations, I see these are diminishing. There's been limitations like you can't do certain things, whereas nowadays you start to look at what AI is able to do inside Excel, and it's mind-blowing. And I'm going to show you some live stuff as well as we do through that. It's going to be faster, it's going to be more efficient. But to Carl's point, you still have to have the emotional intelligence to go and talk to someone about the numbers. You still have to influence people. Ultimately, the spreadsheet or the model is only a tool to make a decision. And the decision is not going to get made by the machine. The decision is going to get made by the human, at least for the next a few years. AI hallucinates, so we need to understand that and deal with that. When we look at the finance tech stack and sort of look at how the different elements work, and I'm going to go a bit technical on this side because I think it's important that we understand all these different elements. So, whether it's in the SME or corporate landscape, I always look at the three pillars of the finance tech stack. We have the automation pillar, and that may be through RPA, through VBA, through Python, and of course, through elements of AI. And a lot of what we do is try to automate, to try and make humans' lives easier, quicker, so they can do other things that are more focused on the human elements, the influencing, the decision-making. Those are important aspects. Then we have the analytics stack. And now we're talking about diagnostic, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics. Again, really important. And you heard Margaret talk about some of her work in the data space. Analytics is ultimately at the core of some of the key insights that we're going to drive. But I also want to just call out that analytics is not financial modeling. And I think this is where people often get their knickers in a knot and they get confused. Whilst there is forward-looking analytics called predictive analytics, or sometimes prescriptive, it's very different to financial modeling. Financial modeling is very shallow and very broad. What I mean by shallow is there's not a lot of data, whereas analytics is a lot more data, particularly if it's data-driven and it's an analytical dashboard. You can't do some of those things in Excel. But with financial modeling, a lot of that is done in Excel. You're talking about the standard three-way model or three-way modeling, which is your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow. Investment banks are still using Excel. Lots of people are still using Excel because it has the flexibility and it doesn't have a lot of data. That's an important distinction when people are trying to understand, well, what does the tech stack look like for finance? And I'd say if you are looking at your finance tools, then you have to make sure that you're at least covering all three of these key pillars. These key pillars I don't think are going to change. There may be some movements in between and there might be some crossover. So I think what we are seeing now is that AI is actually playing a role in all three. Particularly in financial modeling, it hasn't played a big role, but that is increasing as I'm going to show you later. Certainly, there's been AI in analytics, in Copilot, in Power BI, and Fabric. We've seen that. And of course, automation is largely been AI-driven, but also there's tools like RPA and the like. What is AI? I think this is the important thing because I think people throw around and they don't really understand the concepts. And I did a webinar with Danielle, who I believe is on as well in our webinar as a guest. So Danielle, myself, Craig Hatmaker, and Jeff Robson did a webinar a while back. And it's important for us to understand what is AI actually. So, a language model versus a calculation model. Now, language models, everyone's familiar with ChatGPT. That's a language model, or an LLM, a large language model. So these language models are great for conversation, great for doing things, but they're not necessarily good at calculations. They are getting better, and we've seen that improve, but it's important to understand that distinction. So calculation models and AI and language models, different skill sets, almost like, as we are with humans. So, what we are talking about is the ability to use these tools in the right way and understand, what are we doing? So language models were developed with reinforced learning. And sort of that's why you have a GPT. It's a generalized pre-transformer. It really understands all of the patterns around language. And so that's an important concept, as opposed to calculations, which of course, are more mathematical. And so of course, we do expect things to change, and AI has been around for a very long time. It's just not been easily accessible by everyone. Tokens. What are tokens? So tokens are important, or tokenizer. You can see a screenshot here, which is, how does AI work with language? And ultimately, it's how it's measured. So it's about how you measure or quantify the volume of the data that's being used in AI, and they are through tokens. So, that's how pricing works, that's how volume works and computation works. All of these tokens are used to calculate and quantify how much processing you need. And for natural language and generative AI models, they're using these tokens. And, often it'll run out of capacity, and it's, I guess the limitations in how much you've got. So tokens are an important concept just to understand when you're looking at different AI tools, what does it mean? Then model parameters. So all of these models have different parameters. Just like you have an Excel spreadsheet and you have some assumptions, you can have some parameters around debt or interest. They're assumptions. And there are things that have fundamental changes to how the model operates. You have different model types. So we have Da Vinci, we've got Grok, we've got Claude, we've got ChatGPT, we've got Copilot. Each of these are different types of models, and they all have different impacts in what we are going to use. And whilst you don't have to be an AI expert, we need to recognize the shortfalls and the benefits of certain models. So I'm a big supporter of Claude, which is Anthropic. So Claude Sonnet is a really, really powerful, and I'm going to touch on some of these AI tools shortly, as opposed to just your standard ChatGPT, which is by OpenAI, or even Microsoft Copilot. It doesn't have similar coding capability or calculation capability and technical ability like Anthropic through Claude. Temperature. Temperature is a really interesting concept, and I guess to the point that Carl was making earlier around hallucinations. AI is not perfect. It's not by any stretch. And if it doesn't have the right information, it will make it up. It literally will create things out of nothing. So the creativity and the randomness factor is what's referred to as the temperature of that model. So low temperature, low hallucination, high temperature, high hallucination. And of course, as modelers and as finance professionals, we don't want any hallucination. So we've got to be really careful and really aware of that. The next one is really the parameters that you put into your prompts. So what are you prompting? How do you ask the question? What role do you give context? And what sort of content are you sharing? That's an important model parameter in terms of using models. So this is a screenshot from my browser, right? So I have I now use Microsoft Edge just because it's so more integrated to Copilot as opposed to Google Chrome. And within my Edge browser, I have all of these different AI tools. So I've got Tab AI, I've got Microsoft Copilot, I've got Gemini, I've got Grok, I've got Claude. I started playing a little bit with video, with Deep Brain AI. Bard, for those that remember, is Gemini's. It no longer exists. It got replaced by Gemini. And then, of course, ChatGPT, OpenAI, and, of course, Discord. So Discord is a platform which enables you to access Midjourney, which is probably the leader, or used to be the leader, I don't know, maybe now, of AI-generated imagery. So all of these, the market has absolutely exploded. And I guess it's important to be aware of them and also have a play and trial them. So I think, Grok I use for social media, a little bit of AI generation. Anthropic I use a lot more for technical stuff like technical accounting or calculations. Tab AI I'm now using inside Excel to build models, to do things, to check models, to validate things. So that's kind of my AI agent inside Excel. And then a few others. So I use Microsoft Copilot if I want to play within the Microsoft world, if I want to put stuff into a Word doc. I find Microsoft Copilot in Excel is not that great, so I haven't tended to go down that path. And I guess that's one of the things that why we have to not, just rely on one particular tool. We need to be across the evolution of all these tools, and I know that can be difficult. This is what I love about what I do. Being able to understand all the different benefits of these different tools is important. So let's touch on why do things go wrong, and often badly. And I think it's back to Carl's point of garbage in, garbage out, right? So if we're not careful on the data and the process, and often we have clients saying, we want to adopt AI, we want to use AI, but then they don't have good models. They just don't have basic fundamentals of good data. When I say good models, good financial models. They're not even doing budgeting, planning, and rolling forecasting, but they want to adopt AI. And I guess that's where things can get tricky. If we put AI on top of bad data, it's not going to do a great job. And, the whole concept of generative AI in terms of the language model, it's because it's generating information that it has gaps on. And so that's why we've got to be careful when using some of these. And it doesn't necessarily have the relational reasoning. I think when they first started, it didn't. I think it's getting better. But back to Carl's point about emotional intelligence and reasoning and gut feel, as humans, we still have that advantage over AI. And I think we'll still continue to, where we just can look at something and feel that it's not quite right. AI can't say, here's the answer, but I don't feel it's quite right. It's not going to do that. It's just going to tell you, here's the answer, and it believes that it's right. And then you have to tell it, no, actually, you're wrong. And then it'll apologize and do some weird things. So that's actually quite cool in how things have evolved. One of the other gentlemen that joined Danielle and myself was Craig Hatmaker. Craig has been doing a lot of work in this space, and he's got a beautiful AI video creation. So I'm going to play it now because I guess when I look at, the possibilities of what AI can do for us, it's pretty amazing with its text, image, voice, music, animation, and video. I mean, what you're going to see here is kind of a combination of all of those. So I'll play this little short clip and we'll see.
Hi, I'm Craig Hatmaker's AI avatar. My voice was created on 11labs.io and my animation was created on studio.d-id.com.
It just blows my mind how accurate that is. And when you look at it, and it's got all the elements, and that was entirely generated by AI. And Craig was more than happy for his voice to be used by AI and his imagery. But it's amazing. You wouldn't have thought that would be AI. If you showed the same video a few years ago and it wasn't saying that it's AI, then you just wouldn't be the wiser. Whereas now even real things we have to question. So I think, back to the point of, will AI replace me? And I absolutely agree with what Carl's saying. AI is not going to replace you by itself. But what will is other people who are using it. The current state of AI, I said here, it's funny, I haven't updated the slide. It's current state of AI cannot create a financial models. Well, actually, I'm going to show you that it actually can. Now, it's not going to be that great, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's certainly going to be quite innovative from where we were. But people who are not using AI are going to fall behind. And so it's really important that we all understand and get to use some of these tools as we develop, because it is going to get better and it is going to improve through time. There's dangers and risks of AI, which we talk about: data privacy, security. There's bias. I mean, look, let's be honest, there's bias in humans as well. So a lot of these traits exist with humans as well as with AI. But with AI, it's a bit more difficult because AI thinks it's right when it's not. Whereas if you ask a person, generally they're going to be quite honest. The legal and regulatory compliance elements are important. The transparency. So when AI gives you a number, where did it get it from? One of the things that I've noticed, particularly with ChatGPT and Copilot in financial modeling, is it just gives you a number. It doesn't actually show you the logic or the calculations. And that's not good enough. For me, that's not good enough as a financial modeler. I want to actually see the logic. I want to see the calculations because I want to be able to explain it. And so you can certainly hand over tasks to AI, but you cannot hand over responsibility. If you're going to use AI, you need to maintain responsibility for the results, whether you develop them or AI develops them. And that's important. Absolutely going to be economic and employment impacts. So we have to develop our teams and help them. So I think that's an important aspect of all of this. By the way, if you have any questions, please put them onto the chat and we can definitely answer them later and go through that. But I think all of these aspects are really, really, really useful. I think that's it for the technical stuff. Now we're going to get our hands dirty and actually show some really cool tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass on to Margaret, who's going to take us through Venna Copilot and I guess talk through some of those aspects. Margaret, over to you.
Thank you, Lance. Right, so what we're going to talk about is how we can take planning, reporting, analysis really to the next level with the introduction of AI. But before I go into that, I just want to, by way of introduction, just give everybody a quick overview of what Venna actually is. So it is a complete financial and operation performance management solution. It combines the familiarity of Excel that we all know and love with a secure, connected platform to unify planning, reporting, analysis, and collaboration across everybody within your organization. So it means that we can continue to use Excel, but we know that we've got the added control, scalability of a cloud-based solution that sits behind it. And it really does, it brings budgeting, forecasting, reporting, and operational planning all together in one secure, connected platform. But now when we start looking at AI and how we can use AI within the context of FP&A, this is where we start introducing Venna Copilot. So Venna Copilot is our generative AI purpose-built for FP&A. And when I say agentic, that really doesn't mean, that just means that it acts as a series of different agents on our behalf. So it doesn't just answer questions, but it starts to understand what our intent is. It decides on the best way to complete the tasks to get the work done for us, whether it's running calculations, producing a report, or even just sharing the results. So the best way to think of the Venna Copilot is really just another highly capable financial analyst in our team. We don't just ask them for last quarter's results. We can actually get them to pull that data, reconcile it, run variance analysis, highlight key drivers, and then give us a nice, clean, ready to use report that we can share with the rest of our team. And as you can see on this slide, there's a few core capabilities within Venna Copilot. So the first one is the complex FP&A tasks that it can complete within seconds by dynamically deploying all of these different agents that are available in the background. So this means faster, better informed decision making for you and your teams. So we actually get our teams doing the strategic stuff rather than just the number crunching. Secondly, Copilot is now fully integrated with Microsoft Teams, which means that we can collaborate real time with our teams, sharing the insights, recommendations, sharing reports right within a conversation within Teams. And then lastly, but most importantly, because as we all know that AI adoption needs to be safe and responsible, as it's been mentioned several times, Copilot within Venna delivers transparent AI with enterprise-grade security, privacy, compliance. You have full visibility into your data, but with the governance features that makes sure that your organization is using AI safely and responsibly. So rather than just me telling you what Copilot can do, let's see how we can go from questions to actionable insights within the Venna platform. So Lance, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry everyone, I stopped sharing a bit prematurely there, but all good. Hopefully everyone saw that.
Okay, can everybody see my screen okay? Lance, can you see that?
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a demo of the Venna Copilot in the context of a company that produces and sells various different models of e-bikes. Okay, so within Copilot, similar to any of the other AI tools that you'll be familiar with, we can go ahead and ask it a series of questions and it's going to generate those answers for us. So if we start with a question, and just in the interest of saving time, I'm just going to paste a question in. If we ask Copilot, what are the April revenues by product? It is going to go away into the Venna data model that sits behind this. Copilot is layered on top of your Venna data model, fully protected with all of your data permissions that exists within your Venna model. And you can see it has now pulled out a nice, neat little list here of all of the revenues for April 25 by product. And if we scan down that list, looking at each one of these products, we can see that this AMP off-roader model was the lowest performing in revenue terms of all of our products. So if we wanted to now drill down a little bit further and ask to see, what was the year-over-year change for the AMP off-roader model in April 25. So if I paste in the question here for the year-over-year change, it's going to go away, analyze all the data that sits within the data model, and now start to pull back different calculations and then calculate the movement in gross margin year on year. So you can see that it's given me the gross margin for April 25 of 1.2 million. It's pulled out the gross margin for prior year of 1.3 million and calculated the movement of 110,000 year on year. Now, if we wanted to take it a step further, we want to ask it to produce a report for us. So as an example of a question, let's ask him to create a report for April revenue by product and by customer. Again, going back into the model, retrieving all of the information and creating a report that I can now download in Excel. Let's open that up. Okay, and move that across. So you can see again, retrieving all of the information from our secure data model, and it is now within a matter of seconds pulled together a report, revenue by customer and product for April 2025. We can then share that report, customize it if we want to, and share it even within our team's conversation that we are having. Okay, if I flip back to Copilot, series of other questions that we could ask it. Let's say that we want to look at how we can actually improve this particular product's revenue in the forthcoming months. So if we look, how can we improve revenue from May to December? Looking at the April performance, it's going to provide a list of action items that we can then start to do in order to drive our revenue. So it's going to include things like looking at sales drivers, marketing strategies, customer demand. We can start to continue to take that further and further, challenging our data, questioning our data. One of the things we might ask is, give us some ideas of some of the tricky questions that the board members might ask with regards to our Q1 revenue. So this starts to get us looking at the numbers in a slightly different and more challenging way. So really the sky is the limit when it comes to Copilot within the Venna platform. And one thing I touched on briefly, but just to reiterate, the data is all contained within your data model, so it's not going out externally and trying to identify and drive what your revenue might be. It's only based on the models or the data that sits within the Venna models, and also it's wrapped around the whole data security. So I can't ask Copilot questions that I do not have permission to view. So I can't go and ask, what my boss's salary is with regards to a workforce type model. It would be restricted by all of your data permissions. So this really does take FP&A to the next level, and I think really the sky's the limit. So, thanks everybody. I'm going to hand back to Lance.
Thanks, Margaret, and thanks for those questions coming through. We can definitely respond to them. I think the key thing I'm going to cover now is more on the SME side, and obviously we've got a workshop coming up this Thursday. So the aspects of this is important because this is kind of not in the Venna space, which is much more larger corporates. In the smaller space, we're using things like Xero. The workshop, we're going to cover the modern finance stack. We're going to touch on modern Excel, Power Query, dynamic arrays, lambdas, and the like. Experiencing the speed of three-way modeling development from cloud accounting Xero and leveraging Xero as well, and Excel, and then ultimately pushing that into a Power BI, fully fledged Power BI dashboard in seconds with no data warehouse. So what Margaret was showing you was Venna within a big data model and a data warehouse. And that works certainly for larger corporates, but for the SME space, and if you're doing fractional CFO work or the smaller space, it's very costly to deploy that sort of technology. So this is how would we still use these technologies and AI, but not necessarily deploying a larger. But in many cases, you need that security. You need those level of controls, and so it just depends on where you're in. And then, of course, during the workshop, we're going to play with some AI. So I guess some examples here as well. We're going to talk through, dynamic arrays like sequence. We're going to play with some Power Query. We're going to use some unique and filter and use some lambdas as well, like the by column lambda, where we're adding columns. There's going to be showing you how to build full three-way financials, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow straight out of Xero. So for those that want to participate, we'll get access to a Xero file and then build some of these models, have scenarios and simulations and show you how those work. So simulations are quite powerful. So rather than having a low case, middle case, upside case, you might have a range of scenarios that you push through. And of course, that helps with various aspects. Power BI deployment, again, with ease. So we're talking about deploying a desktop Power BI, not with a whole data warehouse. It's much easier. And I'm going to show you an example of that shortly. So what we're going to do is actually going to change the model from a low case to an upside case, and then you'll see Power BI updates all the way through, income statements, balance sheet, and cash flow. Power BI also has its own Q&A function and AI capabilities where you can ask questions. But I actually think it's still far behind kind of where it needs to be in terms of the Power BI Q&A. But I think with Copilot, it obviously improves quite a bit. The other aspect we're going to cover is AI. And what we did is we started to leverage tools in the market through third-party APIs. So we're using ChatGPT, Claude, and Grok. So we built our own add-ins. These are all in-house tooling. This isn't available to the market, but we started to use this internally so we could start to see how we can use AI ourselves. But in parallel to us developing this, we came across another tool called Tab AI, which I think is one of the leaders in the market at the moment, which is AI inside Excel without, I guess, the deployment needs of a Venna or a full data warehouse. Now, you do have to recognize that now you are in a bit more open source environment. It does have access to the internet. It does have the ability to go out and come back. So, use it with caution, but I think it's certainly an impressive one. Here's an example of a prompt that I wrote. Provide me some commentary and insights on different scenarios in the model. What risks and key factors do I need to consider? And it does all of that. So I'm going to show you some of these, and then I guess I'm going to also jump to a live presentation. If I want to create an investor presentations with charts, human resources, cost analysis, Margaret, I think that's quite fascinating. Going to ask Werner what my boss's salary is. I think that would be a very bad thing if I suddenly saw a chart of all the top executive salaries. So it's good to hear that they have that data model restriction. Investor presentations, and look, the same thing happens here. You only have access to the data that you have in your Excel, so it won't have access to other places, other than obviously the internet. We're creating executive dashboards, institutional grade. Now, this AI, all of these are built with AI. I did not build any of these dashboards, and even a model audit review. So I just provided these prompts, the prompts but by the way, we'll share all these slides, and of course, all of this is being recorded, so you'll be able to get access to some of these things. And of course, that's an important part of the whole learning opportunity through this webinar. This is all built by AI, as I said. Now, I did some formatting changes and maybe moving some of the charts, so that you could see elements of this, but fundamentally, there was not a lot of time spent by myself doing some of that minor formatting, just moving certain things around, but everything else is built using AI. As we can see here, I've had a massive uptick in my use. So I've used 10 million tokens, input tokens, right? And then output tokens, 465. So remember I spoke about tokens before? This is the volume of the data that's being used. So, input tokens, that's information that I'm giving to AI, and then what it gives back to me. So there's a lot more information that I'm giving it. Now input tokens is also information that it's getting from the web. So one of the things I asked it to build is Tesla model. So it goes out to the internet, pulls Tesla's financials and builds a model off the back of that. So the input tokens is not just input from me, it's also input from other sources. So I'm going to stop sharing now and jump straight into, first of all, Power BI. So, in the workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to cover off how do I build financial models with AI, and also scaling that in with financial modeling. So here's an Excel model. This model is a model that we've built with Excel Cloud, with Xero data. We can see the sales revenue forecast, 1.7, 2, and 1.1. If we jump to Power BI, we've got 1.7 exactly to the same number we saw in Excel, 2 and 1.1. What I'm going to do now is so this is Power BI deployed locally, Excel locally. When I say locally, it can be SharePoint, which is fine as well. So this it's not, so other people in the team can use it. I'm going to change the data source. So what I'm going to change is this the worst case scenario model, and I'm going to change the source to the best case. So I'm going to click browse. Again, this is all that you can do natively within your own tooling. There's no third-party add-ins other than Excel Cloud to pull the data into Excel, but everything else, we're just using smart Excel formulas, dynamic arrays, lambdas, and of course Power BI. I'm going to apply those changes, and what you'll see here, it's going to update the data model schema, and there it jumps, right? So now we have a $5.6 million valuation, 6.8, and whether it's enterprise value or revenue, and then the revenue's increased. So we can start to, and then we can publish this Power BI dashboard. So we can get enterprise level sort of reporting analysis outside, but for an SME, right? We're just using Xero and Excel Cloud. So the other aspect of this is really how do I then start to use Excel and AI? And so what I have here, I've got a bunch of, this is our AI tooling that we built externally. Excel Cloud is another add-in that we use to pull data. And then I've got Tab AI. And Tab AI sits inside Excel, and it has a pane here on the right. There's the agent mode and there's the ask mode. The ask mode is just more chatting. The agent mode, or agentic AI, which is what Margaret also referred to, is where agents do a whole lot of tasks. It's not just this chat back and forth like a language model. It's actually an agent. So this was the investor pitch. Here's some HR modeling. Like I said, all of this is built by AI. I did not build anything. I just moved some of the formatting across. We have scenario analysis. We have an executive summary. We have some due diligence reporting, and the like. And then I was, trying to play and test out some of these prompts, because I want to write a prompt shortly to show you how and what does it do. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I'm going to actually use this sheet, because I wanted to use the sheet. I'm going to say, please create and executive dashboard, 5 KPIs for management. And away we go. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to focus on the task. It's going to look at those particular aspects. It's going to break it down. So now it's going to understand what it's done. It's already articulated. There's 5 tasks that it needs to do. This is probably going to take about 30 seconds. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's doing. And what you're going to see on the left is you're actually going to see the stuff being built. Hopefully it builds some charts. If not, I'll ask it to build some charts as well. So there's 5 tasks. So let's just have a look at these tasks. There's 4 of them pending. So what it does is read and analyze existing financial data and structure. So if you had to give this to a person, they would do exactly that. They would go into the model, they would look at it, identify 5 KPIs, create an executive dashboard and layout within the KPI cards, add some professional formatting, and then verify all of those. So what it's doing is it's actually understanding all those tasks, and it's giving me a progress. So it's completed 1 out of the 5 tasks. So it's gone in, it's reviewed the data inside this Excel workbook, and it's now identifying those KPIs, and it's going to start producing and start creating an executive summary. So what you're going to see magically, and I'm not touching anything, so you can see my hands here, it's hands-free. And I'll just put my hands there so you can see it's not me doing anything. And there it's going to build stuff, right? So, the difference that I found with Tab AI compared to some of the other AI tools, one, it's inside Excel. So we're not trying to use like shortcut AI, which is outside Excel, and they try to replicate Excel, and sort of anti-Excel, which I just don't think is a viable long-term solution. It's creating it inside Excel, number 1. Number 2 is it actually got some really good formatting. So it's not just about getting a whole bunch of data, and there are formulas as well. So you can see there's formulas that are being written inside, not just giving me numbers. Now, interestingly enough, there's some errors. So let's just see how that copes, and we'll fix up those as it's going. So I'm putting in some formatting, but of course, like all things, we need to make sure that we're getting the right information. It's still working on there, so I'm going to let it complete that work. And I think this is where it starts to get exciting. So it's like, you can do some information, it does it really quickly. It's not the most perfect, but I'm going to tell it now that it's still thinking. It's going to so now it's said verify functionality and accuracy. And it's going to go through that and make sure that. So one of the things when you're prompting, you can actually say, well, actually create an error check sheet and make sure that all the formulas are correct. So in this case, it should actually, I noticed there's some issues. Hey, formulas return 0 values. Let me fix those. So, this is why I've been very impressed by Tab AI, because what it's doing is it's actually self-checking and actually fixing things as it goes. And like all things, fixing it and making sure that it does the right thing. And then there you go. It's done some good work and fixed the KPIs and outputs. So let's go down to the bottom. It's almost finished now. Perfect. Now it actually explains what it's done. Explains all of the different elements of where it looked. What is the KPIs? The EBITDA, which is, of course, these are, I guess, if I was to be asked the question myself, which of the 5 KPIs would I develop? Revenue, EBITDA, NPAT after tax, cash position, EBITDA margin, pretty good, pretty accurate. I'd say that in most cases, I'll probably have a few more balance sheet metrics. And I'll just say here, please create a basic dashboard, basic Excel dashboard. And we'll have a look at that. So I guess this is really an impressive tool that is again evolving and is going to get better and better through time. The team, I've been working with this team for a while now. I don't get any revenue. I'm not promoting this for them. I'm not on their books, but certainly I've been impressed with what they've been doing. And look, I've been looking at technology, as everyone should know about me, for quite some time in the financial modeling space. And trying to find a tool that helps with the building process. We used a previous tool I'm not going to mention their name, but those will be very familiar with it. And effectively, it's gone so far down a different path that I just don't think it's embracing some of the really cool, innovative elements of what Excel has to offer in itself. So dynamic arrays, lambdas, and of course some of the AI tooling, which is important. So yeah, any other questions? I guess for Margaret or Carl, happy to pop them on the chat. I'll just look at a time. We have 3 minutes to go, which is, I guess, quite useful. Okay, so it's got some high demand. It's going to take me some time to work through that question, but I might pause and just jump back to the slides, and then I guess we can finish up. So, like I said, this is a great opportunity for you to stay and get connected. Follow me on LinkedIn. Most of you would have come through connecting with me on LinkedIn. modelsusan.com or Potenza as well, or 1618 Technologies. If you do want to reach out or join our training later this week, we will have a session, and again we'll share the link with all of you. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Carl and Margaret for that. If there's anything else, we've got 2 minutes to spare. So yeah, any thoughts, questions? I haven't looked at the chat. I've been focused on slides and models, but anything coming up there? Carl and Margaret, have you seen any useful questions? I think there's Dynamics one there for you, Margaret, in terms of Venna.
Yes, I think Carel's responded to those.
I responded to all the questions, Lance. If
awesome.
people need more information, please reach out to us.
Yeah, excellent. So look, thanks everyone. It's I guess we will send out we'll obviously send you a link to the recording. We'll send you a link to register for the workshop. I don't know, Rizka, if you're online, if you can just post the link in the chat to the workshop, or Wijaya, anyone from my team, just post a link to register for the workshop, which is on Thursday at 11 o'clock. It's going to be held and hosted by our wonderful friends in 1618 Technologies in their boardroom. So yeah, if you do have 4 hours to join, thanks, Rizka. If you do have 4 hours, it's a well-priced workshop. It's 4 hours of getting to actually learn and use some of these tools, understand Microsoft Excel, modern Excel, and really also use Power BI and also Tab AI and other AI tooling. So, really useful for those who really want to upskill themselves or their teams, and certainly an investment that I think is well worth it. But, nothing's cheap or free these days. But ultimately, the link is now on the chat. Thanks, Vijaya, for sharing that link. But please register, and you'll get access to all the models that you've seen, as well as part of that workshop. What you will get access through the webinars, obviously some of the slides that we've shared, and of course the recording is going to be on YouTube as well for you to review. But anything else from either of you? That's bang on time. That is perfect timing. So thanks, Carl and Margaret and the Potenza team for supporting. Anything else?
Thank you, Lance. Thank you to everybody who attended. It was wonderful hosting you. And thanks for being in South Africa in our wonderful facilities there.
Yes, thanks, Carl. It is good as an ex-South African to come back to the homeland and see the wonderful country that gave me the knowledge and the experience to do what I do now. So it's always very appreciative and always love coming to see this beautiful country. So thanks, everyone. It's glad everyone got some really useful things out of it, and we'll no doubt be in touch.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Lance.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all. See ya.